9. Mega monsoons. In what United Nations officials described as a monsoon on steroids, Pakistan's 2022 flooding season was its wettest since records began in 1961. During this time, rainfall was hitting levels as high as 500% above average. The torrential downpours overwhelmed the Indus River, causing major floods throughout the country and forming an inland lake measuring 62 miles across. At least 1/3 of the country was submerged, displacing millions of people and leaving entire towns and farms either underwater or completely destroyed. People were pushed out of their homes as their villages flooded within mere hours and took shelter in displacement camps, abandoned buildings, and roadside tents. So far, at least 1,400 civilians have died trying to escape the encroaching floodwaters. Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari told CNN that the country's officials knew to expect more extreme weather patterns due to climate change, but they weren't prepared for the catastrophic conditions they were faced with. He said that he hoped it wasn't a new climate reality. The effects are expected to impact Pakistan for months or even years as the country grapples with the mess that the floods have created. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif described it as the worst flooding in the country's history and said that international aid will be necessary in order to overcome the disaster. 8. Sudden bee swarm. 20-year-old Austin Bellamy was cutting branches from a lemon tree in Ripley, Ohio in 2022 when he accidentally cut into a beehive. Killer bees began spewing out by the thousands and viciously swarmed the young man. His grandmother, Phyllis Edwards, and his uncle, Dustin Edwards, were standing under the tree as the chaos unfolded. Phyllis told local station WXIX that she was going to try climbing the ladder to get to him, but there were too many bees for her to help in any meaningful way. She said that Bellamy was screaming, but that nobody was doing anything. A firefighter finally arrived at the scene and managed to get Bellamy down. He was rushed to the hospital with an estimated 20,000 bee stings and was placed in a medically induced coma. Doctors suctioned out at least 30 bees that he'd apparently swallowed during the attack, which left him swollen and covered in sting marks. While Bellamy most likely faces a long road of healing ahead of him, doctors predict he'll make a full recovery. It's a pretty remarkable prognosis, considering that the average person is only thought to be able to handle no more than 1,000 stings. 7. High voltage vacation. In 2022, a British mother and physiotherapist Daniela Dimambro was relaxing on a Croatian beach with her 19-year-old daughter when a sudden storm moved in. They ran for cover, but before they could reach safety, Dimambro was struck by lightning. The deadly dose of 3 million volts of electricity immediately knocked her unconscious and caused her heart to stop. A nearby doctor, who just happened to be in the right place at the right time, rushed over and helped paramedics restart Dimambro's heart with mouth-to-mouth resuscitation and cardiac massage. However, it took them about a half hour, meaning that there's a big possibility that the woman may have brain damage from the prolonged lack of oxygen to her system. She was rushed to the hospital with head injuries, severe burns, and internal damage. Dimambro remained in a medical coma as plans were made to fly her back to the UK for the long-term treatment she needs. The woman's loved ones, who hadn't seen her since before she left for the trip and had only limited information about her condition, are reportedly worried that she'll never be able to work again. However, they're left with no choice but to take things slow. Only time will tell the full extent of her injuries, including any brain damage she may have sustained. Professor Sandra Stojanovic-Stipik, who works at the Croatian hospital where Dimambro received treatment, said that the necklace the woman was wearing may have saved her life by conducting the electricity throughout her body. Stipik further explained that the hospital had never dealt with a case like this before. She said that staff members were monitoring Dimambro very closely, but that they simply couldn't predict what could happen in the future. For now, Dimambro's loved ones are just grateful she's alive. 6. Fuel factory explosion. Cuba was rocked by a sudden catastrophe in 2022 when a massive fire broke out at the country's main fuel storage facility. Located roughly 55 miles east of Havana in Matanzas, the site mostly stores fuel that's used to run Cuba's electrical grid. The fire started when lightning struck one of the facility's 10 tanks, prompting the evacuation of around 5,000 people who live nearby. The blaze quickly spread to another tank and caused it to explode. A third, and then a fourth tank caught fire as strong winds fanned the flames. Parts of the sky turned bright orange and stood against the eerie backdrop of heavy black smoke. In a country that was already struggling with frequent hours-long power outages, food and medicine shortages, and other worsening conditions, a disaster of this magnitude was absolutely devastating. Cuba's power situation will undoubtedly become even more dire in the coming months. The Cuban government appealed to what it called friendly countries for help managing the disaster and its aftermath. Mexico and Venezuela sent firefighting crews to the island, while Russia, Nicaragua, Argentina, and Chile also offered assistance. The US offered technical guidance, but was criticized by Cuban officials for not offering to do more. For those hoping to see more cooperation between the countries, who've been at odds since the 1950s, the inability to get along during a severe emergency came as a disappointment. In the end, it took 5 days for firefighters to contain the blaze, and as a result, at least 14 people have been identified as missing. Many are using the incident as an opportunity to encourage better relations between the US and Cuba for the sake of managing disasters, if nothing else. 5. Chiropractor catastrophe. 28-year-old Caitlin Jensen almost skipped her routine chiropractor appointment one morning in 2022, but she decided at the last minute to go. Less than a half hour later, her mother Darlene received a phone call from the clinic in Richmond Hill, Georgia. They told her that Caitlin was having a reaction to her neck adjustment treatment. Darlene didn't wait for the details before heading straight to the chiropractor's office. She would later learn that Caitlin had suffered something called vertebral artery dissection, leaving her with 4 ruptured arteries that caused her to suffer a stroke and 3 heart attacks. Some would later describe her experience as a rare reaction, while others called it a botched procedure. Either way, it put Caitlin's life in grave danger. Darlene told The Independent that when she arrived, her daughter was vomiting and sweating profusely as she was loaded onto an ambulance. She was left on a ventilator for a long time and was left paralyzed with brain damage. In addition to being unable to walk or talk, Caitlin now suffers from double vision. The young woman has an extremely daunting journey ahead of her and will most likely suffer permanent damage. She attends physical and speech therapy and is working extremely hard to relearn how to do simple things that most of us take for granted. Her grandmother, Linda Foster, told the Daily Mail that the doctor who treated Caitlin never reached out to the family after the devastating mishap. Her mother is reportedly considering a medical malpractice lawsuit, but for now, the family's focused on supporting Caitlin while she makes small steps in order to get her life back. 4. Sea lion assault. A little girl was sitting on the edge of a pier with several other people in Richmond, British Columbia in 2017 when a sea lion they were watching suddenly grabbed her and pulled her into the water. The onlookers were feeding the animal breadcrumbs and laughing as it bobbed up and down in the water, hunting for fish. It swam right up to the little girl, who was leaning forward to get a better look. Everyone assumed the sea lion was approaching out of harmless curiosity, so nobody warned the child to back away. However, it suddenly yanked the girl by her dress into the water, leaving no time for anyone to prevent it from happening. A man believed to be the girl's relative immediately dove into the water to rescue her. Luckily, he got her back onto the boat pretty quickly. He was also unharmed, but clearly shaken by the whole ordeal. The sea lion failed to reappear, but it's safe to say that by then the family had seen enough of the creature. Sea lion attacks on humans are reportedly rare, and the animals have a reputation for being timid around people. But it's not unheard of for them to become aggressive, and attacks do make news headlines from time to time. In a lot of cases, the attacks are completely unprovoked. It's also possible, especially in this case, that a sea lion who grabs a human isn't necessarily trying to hurt them. They may have innocent intentions and be unaware that they're putting the person in danger. 3. Lone lightning strike survivor. When a storm hit Washington, D.C. in August of 2022, 4 people sheltered beneath a tree at Lafayette Park, across the street from the White House. They were waiting for the bad weather to pass when they were all struck by lightning. 76-year-old James Muller and his 75-year-old wife Donna had been visiting from Wisconsin and died in the freak tragedy. Brooks Lambertson, a 29-year-old banking executive from Los Angeles, also lost his life. Amber Escudero Contostathis was the only survivor after being struck on the way to her 28th birthday celebration. However, the girl was still severely injured. She suffered second-degree burns all over her body, and her brain lost a lot of oxygen before emergency responders got her breathing again. Miraculously, she pulled through, much to the amazement of her doctors who told her she shouldn't be able to walk or talk. In fact, they reportedly said that they'd never seen anyone else survive what Amber had gone through. The lightning strike left her with nerve damage from the waist down, and she lacks feeling in her legs. She uses a walker now and has been slowed down by the accident, but feels incredibly grateful to be alive and still plans to live her life to the fullest. 2. Sudden stage collapse. A wooden stage that was being used at a 2022 music event in Spain was no match against the heavy winds that caused it to collapse. This incident reportedly killed one person and injured dozens more. The Medusa Festival is a huge 6-day electronic music festival that takes place near Valencia in the town of Cullera. Around 4 o'clock in the morning on August 13th, sudden unpredicted gusts of wind began destroying parts of the festival, including the main section of the stage. Temperatures quickly rose as winds reached speeds of up to 52 miles per hour, blowing tents, equipment, and parts of the stage everywhere. Witnesses to the event said the conditions resembled a blinding sandstorm. DJ Miguel Serna, who was performing his set at the time, later wrote on Instagram that he'd never experienced anything like it before. He described the ordeal as a tense few minutes and was still in shock as he reflected on the tragedy. The rest of the event was called off for obvious safety reasons, and attendees were sent home, bringing what was supposed to be a nearly week-long excursion to a bizarre and disappointing end. At least 32 people were hospitalized, with 3 individuals suffering serious injuries. Survivors were left feeling shocked by the deadly freak storm, and while it was likely upsetting to end the music festival early, many were thankful to be alive after witnessing the deadly stage collapse. 1. Jaws Bridge Jump. In Martha's Vineyard in 2022, 4 young men decided to go for a late-night summer swim. They decided to start by jumping off the iconic bridge that was featured in the 1975 shark thriller famously known as Jaws. There are supposedly several signs on the bridge warning visitors against diving off it, but it's a popular swimming spot and people dive in all the time without any issues. 2 of the friends made it safely to shore after jumping into the 15-foot deep water, but the other 2, 26-year-old Tavares Bolgan and his 21-year-old brother Tavon, got carried away by a strong current. The Coast Guard searched for them throughout the night and found the remains of Tavares during the early morning hours. Tavon's body was found 3 days later by a local fisherman. Oak Bluff's fire chief Nelson Wirtz told the Boston Globe that the water beneath the bridge has a strong current and runs very, very fast. He said that experienced swimmers can handle it, but that weaker swimmers can expect to get easily overwhelmed and end up in trouble. This appears to be what happened to Tavon and Tavares, who were visiting Massachusetts for the summer from Jamaica. They planned to stay in the area and work seasonal jobs, not realizing that they'd never make it back home. Thanks for watching. Would you rather be snowed in by a sudden blizzard that dumps 6 feet of snow on your town overnight, or walk 15 miles to the nearest gas station in 90-degree heat after your car breaks down? Let us know in the comments below, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel.